Roman art is an excellent indicator of what mattered to people in Roman times, and just as our tastes change and develop in succeeding generations, so did those of ancient Rome. The changes of tastes in ancient Rome were reflected in simple things like hairstyles and dress, and in more complicated things like housing, places of worship, and imperial monuments. Changes in taste can also be seen in portraiture, from the idealistic to the realistic, and in the subject matter depicted in household and public decoration, from elaborate mythological scenes to simple decorative motifs. What about the origin of the ancient Romans? It is most likely the original Latin people who settled Rome came from north of the Alps prior to 100 BC. Etruscans, mass of people from the east, moved into the area north of Rome known as Tuscany. Etruscans moved south into Latin territory and took over the rule of Rome during the 7th century BC. In 509 BC, the Etruscan kings who had been ruling Rome were tossed out by the Latin populace. 200 years before Christ, the Romans controlled all of Italy and the entire Mediterranean coast in Europe and in part of North Africa. The Latins were a bourgeois, agricultural, practical, and earthbound people. The art form in which they made their most distinctive contribution was architecture. The invention of concrete and the use of the arch on a monumental scale enabled them to build roads, bridges, and amphitheaters on a scale never before complicated. Great size and scope were valued above painstaking detail. The realism of Roman portrait sculpture is often surprising, especially when compared with the Greek. The idealized innocence of the Greek face contrasts dramatically with the careworn Roman face. The Greeks sought the ideal. The Romans preferred the ordinary and everyday. The Greeks used analogies of man and God to describe historical events. The Romans preferred to see the actual events in complete everyday, factual detail. Also, the Romans had a terrific knack for organization. The organization of the Roman Republican government is still a model for modern societies. Their Senate, like ours, consisted of the most learned or influential people in the country. The loyalty of the well-organized and efficient Roman armies also contributed to the stability of the early republic. So did the good judgment the Romans exercised in allowing conquered peoples to maintain their way of life almost completely intact. In the early Republican period, the religion of the Romans was essentially earthbound. Roman religion amounted to superstitious nature worship. The concept of family was also worshipped with elaborate ritual and ceremony. During the imperial period, after the death of Christ, Christianity began to threaten the personality cult that surrounded the emperor. The Roman leaders tried to control religion and make it a tool of the state. But until then, tolerance for foreign religious practices, such as the funeral dance, and tolerance for foreign ideas in general was a significant virtue of Roman civilization. And in art, the powerful influence of foreigners was never seriously threatened. The ancient Greeks were the Romans' acknowledged masters in the field of art and culture.